Hey guys, Mr. Jalapeno here with another episode of Jalapeno Drywall. And on today's project, we're going to be repairing this drywall damage caused by this guy right here. So the first thing I did was I peeled off a little bit of the drywall paper, which has the color that I'm going to be matching. I'm going to show you how to do that at the end of the video, so stay tuned. The dog's going to be my supervisor today. He just wants to make sure I'm doing things correctly, like putting plastic down, that way I don't make a mess on the carpet. Then I'm just going to prep the damaged area and remove any of the loose material that might be around there. It helps to scrape it down with your drywall knife if you need to. I'm also going to be applying some of this Kills primer over the area. I have the mold and mildew one. You don't necessarily need this one. You could just get the original one. What that's going to do is that it's going to help seal everything up. If I just apply mud over the area as is, that drywall paper is going to bubble up and you do not want that. Now just let it dry completely before you start applying the drywall mud. I'm going to be using Easy Sand 5 or hot mud. You can also use joint compound, but what I like about this hot mud is that you could apply multiple coats in a short amount of time, therefore speeding up the process a little bit. I'm going to be adding some of this fiber fuse tape over the patch to help strengthen it. And now I'm just going to apply the first coat over the tape to help smooth it out. The first coat's always like the rough draft, then you could apply the second coat and then look, it's going to smooth everything out. If you're finding any value from this video, don't forget to follow and subscribe for more Mr. Jalapeno content. And now just grab a wet rag and wipe off the edge before you start texturing. I'm going to be using these sponges I got on Amazon for the knockdown texture. All you have to do after taking them out of the package is just put them in warm water for about 5 minutes and look, they fluff up like that. Most of the time for small repairs, I use that little texture pump or the Easy Pro system. But in this case, I wanted to try them out and they're not that expensive either. I'll have a link to them in my Amazon storefront if you want to get some. And for the texture, I'm going to be using this all-purpose joint compound. You can also use hot mud, but I don't recommend it just because hot mud gets hard quicker and then it could ruin your sponge as well. And as you can see here, the texture that was done before was not the greatest. There's big flat spots. So I'm just going to be adding a little bit of texture to it. And look, that's how you kind of just dab it on there. I wouldn't necessarily say this is my first choice for applying knockdown texture, but it does do the job if you ask me. So once you kind of dab it on there, wait about 5 to 10 minutes before you knock it down. I usually use the magic trowel to knock everything down, but instead of buying a new tool, you can also use your drywall knife. Just be careful not to put too much pressure, that way you don't get another flat spot. It actually turned out better than I expected, honestly. I also made sure I cleaned out the joint compound out of the sponge, that way I could use it for future projects. The texture will take a few hours before it dries, but once it dries, scrape any little boogers off or sand any areas that might need to be sanded. And I also recommend to caulk where the wall meets the trim. This is just going to help smooth everything out, that way it doesn't look too rough. It also helps to remove the excess caulk. Remember, we want nice smooth corners, as you can see here. And remember how I told you I was going to match the paint? Well, I just went to Home Depot and I gave the guys at the paint station that piece I peeled off at the beginning of the video, remember? That way they could color match it. All I had to tell them was that it was a semi-gloss sheen and they had it ready for me in 10 minutes. And now it's time to paint. I would usually tape off the trim before I start painting, but the trim and the walls are the same color. So I just use my brush to cut in the corners first. Then I'm going to be using this tray and this roller to paint the whole patch. Just make sure you spread out that paint evenly on the roller. The paint says it's paint and primer in one. It works as a primer, so I just made sure I applied 2 coats to the patch. Don't forget to feather it out, that way it blends in a little bit better to the existing wall. The supervisor made sure I did 2 coats, that way it doesn't flash. And there you go, after everything dried, the paint matched perfectly. I asked the supervisor what he thought, and he just didn't seem too excited about it. But hey, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Jalapeno Solutions. Boom!